So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Gran Turismo. But before I do that, I should say what's at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers. But you prefer to listen to your podcasts? Well, guess what? You can with this one too, at Night of the Movies on Spotify. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, and you there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whether it's me watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Gran Turismo. So, this is the new film directed by Neil Blomkamp. I think that's how I pronounce his name. And he has previously directed such films as District 9 and Chappie. And I haven't seen District 9 in a very long time, but I remember being taken by the film when I saw it for the first time, really being surprised by it and, yeah, really liking it. And then I watched Chappie for the first time a couple of days ago. I watched it on Netflix, and I really didn't like it that much. I just never really cared about anything going on in the film. I mean, it was well made. I like how they did the Chappie robot. I don't actually know how they did that. It looked real, and I believed that that robot was actually real when I was watching the film. I just realised I'm not centre frame there. I believed in that robot when I was watching the movie, but I just didn't really care about much that was going on in Chappie. Didn't really work for me. And he has directed this film, and when I saw his name was attached, it intrigued me. I wouldn't say I got excited by his name being attached to this film, but I found it an intriguing element in the production of this movie. And the film follows the quote-unquote true story, and the reason I did the quote-unquote there is because, you know, sometimes there are parts of these stories which are fake or are over-dramatized and whatnot. So it follows the quote-unquote true story of a player who wins a series of Nissan-sponsored video game competitions through his gaming skills and becomes a real-life professional race car driver. And that is basically the plot of the movie. And honestly, I found this film to be okay. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. And I think one of the reasons I didn't love this movie, one of the biggest reasons, is because it didn't have that grip and that engagement that I wanted from a film like this. It's entertaining. It's got some really good sequences on the racetrack when you see all the drivers competing with one another. But the thing is, though, it didn't have that same grip that, say, Le Mans 66, aka Ford v Ferrari, had. That is a far better movie with far better story and visual engagement. I didn't get that from this movie. This film has got a lot of things going for it, and the parts of the film which I really enjoyed, but I just didn't love it. And I never really got into it too much. And there are parts of the film which are very predictable. In fact, the whole movie is very predictable. It's predictable with a capital P. You can see where things are coming from a mile away. It also feels generic, and it does feel like Neil Blomkamp copied someone else's template for this underdog story, because that's what the film is, isn't it? That's what the film is in the end. It's an underdog story, and it feels like Neil Blomkamp found a template for how to do a film centered around an underdog story and just copied that. Because there's so many moments of the film where I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen there. Oh, I know what's going to happen here. Oh, insert shot here. Insert dramatic shot here. Insert twist in the story here. Insert character moment. That's what it felt like. None of it really felt new or unique or fresh, like it was doing anything different. I'm not saying it needed to, but at the same time, no, I would have liked it to So it would have made it more fulfilling experience for me, because I didn't hate the film. I really didn't. There was parts of the film, as what I mentioned, which I really enjoyed. The last half an hour of the film is cracking. It's absolutely fantastic. And I was watching that last half an hour, like, if you had this same momentum throughout the rest of the movie, I would like it so much more. But the fact is, the last half an hour does work, just the rest of the movie just doesn't work as well, in my opinion. But the reason last half an hour works is because you've got all these storylines come together, and the heart of the film is really there. And the heart of this movie is the relationship between the main character and his father. And his father is played by Djimon Hounsou in the film. I think I pronounced his name correctly. Apologies if I haven't. And Djimon Hounsou is terrific in this movie. He gives off such a phenomenal performance. He's subtle, but at the same time, you can tell every emotion he's conveying, and in the best way possible. But it really feels like they only got Djimon Hounsou for a week on this film when they were shooting it. It doesn't feel like they really got him for a large amount of time, and the relationship between the main character and his father is the best part of the film. That was the part of the film which I found most compelling. But they don't focus on it as much as they really should do. And whenever Djimon Hounsou pops up in the movie, I was loving it. But he's not in it that much. He's only in about 10 minutes of the film, maybe not even that. And when he's in it in the final half an hour, I was like, yes, this is what it should have been like all along. But in the end, he's not in it that much, and yeah, I do think that was a missed opportunity, because I really love Djimon Hounsou in this film. And the relationship between the father and the son and the main character, you know, that really works. But it's not there as much as you want it to be. And at the same time, the film is apparently based on a true story. And I don't know the true story, so I don't know how accurate it is to what actually happened, but apparently it's based on a true story. And I must say, the story alone is more interesting than the way it's told in the film. I don't think the storytelling is, again, that unique and that engaging. I actually found it unengaging at times. And as I've titled this podcast, you know, as I put in the title of this podcast today, it felt like an advertisement for Gran Turismo. That is my biggest problem with this movie. And I've never played the Gran Turismo game in my life. I know people who have. One of my closest friends is a huge fan of racing games and has played the game. And I have played some racing games in my time. You know, I've got an Xbox One downstairs, well, it's an Xbox One X now. I actually got the updated version last year. And on my Xbox One in the past, though, I played Forza Horizon 3 and Forza Horizon 4. Both of those games I really enjoyed. And so I kind of know what a racing game is like, but I'm guessing, and I don't know if this for certain, but I'm guessing that Gran Turismo is a bit different than the Forza Horizon games. Because, you know, you're in a racetrack, and the Forza Horizon games, you're like exploring what Australia, the UK, and Forza Horizon 4, and you don't get that in the Gran Turismo games. As far as I'm aware, I've never played them myself. The thing is, though, I was watching this film, and it felt like one big advertisement for Gran Turismo, even to the point that Orlando Bloom's character, and I'll get onto Orlando Bloom a bit later in this review, in this podcast, but even to the point like Orlando Bloom's character quite literally says at one point, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, Gran Turismo is fantastic. And I'm pretty sure he was looking around the camera. He was looking into the camera, but I don't know if he was looking right at the audience, if you get what I mean. But I'm pretty sure he meant to be saying that to the audience. And I think the filmmakers and the producers behind this movie want you to go and play Gran Turismo after you've seen it. I really feel that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the audience members who are watching the film go, wow, that was such a great movie, let's go and play Gran Turismo now. That's what it feels like. But I saw through that. It felt like one extended advertisement for Gran Turismo, and I didn't really like that too much about it. It honestly feels like this could play before a Gran Turismo game and you load it up on your PlayStation. Again, I never played one myself, but that's what it feels like. And my mates who I was watching this with, one of my closest friends, who has played Gran Turismo, he even agreed with me. He agreed with me that this felt like one extended advertisement for the Gran Turismo game. And I should also say as well that I am not really into cars whatsoever, so that might be another reason that I don't like this movie. Because I'm not really into this type of sport. I don't even know if you really call it sport. I suppose you do. Yeah, I'm not really into it myself. And nothing against anyone who does, each their own. There's plenty of things I'm into which people aren't really. Just look behind me. So, yeah, it's not really my sort of thing. So the fact that I didn't like it, that might be another reason why I didn't dislike the film. Don't know why I said that. The fact that I didn't get into it too much might be because I don't really care about racing in general. It's just not my type of thing. And on to the performances. First of all, I just want to say this. I didn't realise this until this morning when I watched I watched another person's review of this film. Geri Halliwell, who was one of the Spice Girls, is in this film. I didn't even realise that. Show you how much I'm a fan of the Spice Girls. Honestly, I've never really listened to any of their songs unless it popped up on the radio or something. But I didn't realise she was in this movie. And she plays the mother of the main character. And she's not in this film loads. But she does a good job. I believed in that character. I bought into her character. She's not brilliant in the film, but she's good enough. And like I said, I found her believable, and when I found out she was in the film, I was like, oh, that's interesting, she's getting into acting, and then I saw who she was married to, and I was like, oh, that's why she's in the film. Go and look up yourself if you haven't already. But on to the main performances. I don't know the main actor in the film, I'll just quickly look him up, bear with me. What's his name? I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. Archie Madiku. I might pronounce it correctly. Apologies if I haven't. But Archie Madiku, he does a really good job. I'm not going to say he's the world's best actor, but, he made it believable. I actually believed that it was his story. Like, it didn't feel like he was playing a character so much. And maybe that's because I haven't really seen the actor in anything else. But I didn't really feel like I was watching the character he was playing. I felt like I was watching him. And at first, I thought his performance was going to be quite one note throughout the rest of the movie. And then as the film progresses, it starts to change and his performance progresses and his performance develops along with his character, and I liked the way he played the protagonist of the film. I thought he did a good enough performance, especially when he was acting off David Harbour. He's acting opposite David Harbour in the film, and I love David Harbour. Ever since I saw him as Hopper in Stranger Things, I fell in love with him, and he was the best part of the Black Widow film. And I also really loved him in Newsroom. He wasn't in that show much, but the Aaron Sorkin show Newsroom, he was great in. And he is one of the best parts of this film. Whenever David Harbour was on screen, he felt like his heart was actually in the movie. Like, he felt like he had something invested in the film. And I really liked his performance. A lot of his performance isn't... A lot of the best parts of his performance in this film is not through the dialogue he speaks, but rather through the way his facial expressions just convey emotions. And yeah, he's really good in the film, showing a different side to him than I'd seen beforehand with the likes of Stranger Things, Newsroom, and Black Widow. I've seen him in something else, but it's just not coming to mind right now. And then you also have Orlando Bloom. And listen, I like Orlando Bloom as an actor. I don't know about that. Just take that back then. I like Orlando Bloom in the Lord of the Rings films, in the Hobbit movies. I can't really remember much else he was in. I know he's in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, and I haven't seen those films for a while, but I don't really remember much about him in those films. I remember a little bit about him in the first Pirates of the Caribbean, and a little bit of him in the third film, but yeah, I don't remember much of him in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and he's not great in this film. But the funny thing is, he approaches every line of dialogue that he has in this film like his life depends on it. Like, he goes, oh, we're gonna get this racer. That's what he's like throughout most of the film. And, I admire what he's trying to do. He's trying to show how passionate he was about what he was doing, what the character was doing in the film, but I'm sorry, I just didn't buy into performance. I didn't think Orlando Bloom was that good in the film. He was one note throughout most of the movie, and a lot of the lines of dialogue that he says actually had me cringing a little bit because of Orlando Bloom's performance. And again, I think Orlando Bloom can do good performances. I've liked him in films of the past. Not many movies, and the movies I've liked them in have all been directed by the same person, but still, an actor can prove me wrong. That can happen. I just didn't really care about Orlando Bloom in this film, though, and I didn't really buy into his performance too much. And going on to the filmmaking, it's good. It's got this nice energy and flair to it. But again, it just wasn't as gripping as I wanted to be. I think this is a well-directed film, to a degree, by Neil Blomkamp. I'd say the direction is good. It's fine. It's not, it's not a badly directed movie. I just wouldn't say it's really well directed, the same way District 9 was. Or the same way I remember District 9 being. Again, I haven't seen that film in quite a while. But it's a well-directed movie, and it does feel, though, like... And this happens all the time with movies like this, with big blockbusters, where a director is a hired hand. And that's what this film feels like. It feels like Neil Blomkamp was hired to direct this movie. And he was told to make one extended advertisement for the Gran Turismo game, and that's what he did. And I'm not saying he did a bad job, but at the same time, I would have liked there to be a bit more authorship in this film, because say we will about Chappie, love it, hate it, whatever, I'm really in the middle with it, I didn't really love it, didn't really hate it, but the thing is though, say all about Chappie, but that feels like it's from the same director as District 9. I don't know if I could say the same about this film. I don't know if I'd look at Chappie and this movie and go, oh yeah, it's clearly from the same director. I wanted a bit more authorship from the directing. And the musical score is pretty much what you expect from this film. It's pseudo Hans Zimmer. Apparently one of the composers of this film was Lorne Balfe, who does the scores for the latest Mission Impossible films, from Mission Impossible Fallout and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. The scores for those movies are pretty good, actually. Particularly the score for Mission Impossible Fallout. But I didn't think his score... I know it wasn't just him, I can't remember who also scored it, but I didn't think his score was that good for this film. Again, it's pseudo Hans Zimmer. It's a score you pretty much expect, and yes, it heightens emotions in certain scenes like you want it to, but it's not a great musical score. Honestly, if you played the musical score of this to me, I'm not sure if I'd know it's from Gran Turismo. But sticking on musical scores for a sec, or not sticking on musical scores, but sticking on the music of the movie, I must say I did really enjoy the needle drops in this film. For the most part, there's a couple of needle drops from songs that I just don't like, which I don't think really worked. I think the needle drops are songs that they chose for certain scenes we played in the background could have been done better, but there are a couple of needle drops in the film which add to the main character's characterization, which add to his character, and I really liked that. And there was a needle drop in the film from a Public Enemy song, I think it's called Harder Than You Think, which happened later on in the movie, which I was pleasantly surprised by, because I haven't heard that song in a very long time. When I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, it's that one Public Enemy song I like quite a lot. So yeah, I liked the needle drops for the most part, I just didn't love them, but there are some really good ones in there. And also, the CGI. I don't know how much CGI was used in this film and how much that she shot on a real racetrack. I had heard from, I think, David Harbour or Orlando Bloom, or one of the actors involved. I heard a snippet of an interview saying they actually shot a lot of this film on racetracks. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I don't know if that comes across in the film, though. I've got to admit, a lot of the film felt like it was unused footage from Gran Turismo video games from the past. And I don't know if that was the case. I genuinely don't. I don't know when CGI was used. I think there were some clear moments when CGI is used, and when they had to use CGI. Like, I'm not going to go into spoilers, because this is a non-spoiler review, but there's a couple moments in the film I'm like, yeah, they had to use CGI there, obviously, but I would have liked there to be a bit more realism for me. I would have liked there to... I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't feel like it was always shot on a racetrack. I felt sometimes like they was unused footage from Gran Turismo video games. And sticking on to that thing, it's just one extended advertisement for Gran Turismo. I'm not saying it's a bad advertisement. I'm not saying it's a bad ad for Gran Turismo. Yet, I think there could have been something more unique and different with this film that I wasn't really... That was really going to surprise me. I didn't really get that from it. There is a lot to enjoy in this film, and I can see why someone would go to cinema and really enjoy this movie. Still, I wouldn't really say that it's worth going to cinema to see. I think this is more of a streaming movie, a film you would probably enjoy more if you caught on the likes of Netflix or Prime Video and you didn't really know much about, and then you go, actually, you know what, that was a nice film to pass the time, because I don't think it's anything that you need to rush out to see. Like, usually I don't really pay anything to go to cinema. I have an Odeon Limitless Pass, which means I can watch virtually any film I want in the cinema whenever I want. But I didn't go to an Odeon this time. I went to a Cineworld. And the thing is, though, I had to pay £10 to go and watch this film. And I don't know if it was worth the price of admission. And I'm not saying that, you know, a £10 is a lot for me, really. So, you know, I'm saying that maybe that's a bit cruel of me to say, but the point is, I had to pay to see this movie, and I'm not sure if I would have, you know, in retrospect. I'm not sure if I would have done that, and I would have preferred to watch on streaming, because I think I would have got more out of it. And another thing I want to mention is just that at the end of the movie, when the credits start to roll, it gives you some interesting facts about the true story, and there were some interesting facts about how the true story was used in relation to this movie. If you've seen the film, you know what I mean. There are some funny facts at the end where I sat there going, oh, that's quite interesting. That's probably more interesting than anything in the film, because the story and the writing really isn't that engaging. The dialogue is poorly written, and there are so many moments where I'm like, I can see this coming from a mile away. Okay, he likes his girl, but this girl's now moving away. Oh, but he's still looking at her on Instagram. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen there. Oh, David Harbour, you know, he's playing this guy who's training the main character. He's a bit harsh at first, but I wonder where that's going to go. Oh, this person, he's tormented by everyone in his team. The main character's tormented by everyone in his team, and they all laugh at him behind his back. Oh, but can you see where this is going? Again, it's just very predictable. It's a very predictable film, and it feels like one big advertisement, one extended advertisement for Gran Turismo, and I mean extended, because the film is 2 hours and 15 minutes. It did not need to be that long. If it was more tight, I think it would have had more grip to it. Right, so this is an add-on. It wouldn't be one of my podcasts without an add-on now, wouldn't it? And yeah, I just finished recording this podcast, and I was looking through it, I was looking back over my recorded footage, and I realised I keep saying grip. It didn't have the same grip that I wanted it to, and what I mean by that is that it didn't really have the same thrill, the same sense of thrill that I wanted to, and it wasn't as intense as a viewing experience as I wanted it to be. Honestly, throughout most of the film, I felt like I was watching someone play Gran Turismo instead of watching someone actually experience it. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like I was experiencing the film, and I didn't feel it was nearly as intense and nearly as suspenseful as it should have been, and it wasn't as thrilling as it should have been too. Hence why I think Le Mans 66, aka Ford v Ferrari, is a better film. But anyway, back to the podcast. But the fact is, there are some baggy parts. There's some parts where it feels like Neil Blomkamp has had a bit too much fun in the edit with this film. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame to say, because I think there was a lot to admire with this film, but I also think it could have been a lot better. If you had Jarman Hunter in the film more, then it would have added a lot more heart to the film. They keep referring to him in stages, but it's like, come on, actually have him in the movie. And there was some really entertaining sequences, particularly in the last half an hour, but by that point, I'm not going to say it was too little too late. However, it did feel like it felt like it finally became the film I wanted to be. And the rest of the film felt a bit cheesy, a bit cringeworthy, generic, predictable, a bit stale at times, and a bit heartless. But it was still mildly entertaining. I didn't hate watching or anything. It was okay, you know? It didn't annoy me, really. It was fine. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was an enjoyable watch. But I'm not going to say it was much better than that. Although I think the last half an hour was really where the film, came into its own. Everything else in the movie, I can take it or leave it. And as I've titled this podcast today, it is a mildly entertaining extended advertisement for Gran Turismo. And that's pretty much how I feel about the film as a whole. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Gran Turismo, I'm going to say that it's a 6.3 out of 10. I'm giving it that rating because any film I enjoy, I give a 6 out of 10 or higher. But I wouldn't say I really enjoyed this film. I just enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the last half an hour, but the last half an hour wasn't the rest of the film. Right, so this is just another quick little add-on. One thing I forgot to mention is I went to go and watch it with 3 other people. One person hated it, one person loved it, and the other person I watched it with felt similar to me, that it was just okay, it was watchable, fun, entertaining, but that it was, mildly entertaining at that. And so, it's all subjective. You may get that same experience as the person I went to go and see it with who loved it, or you might be like the person I went to go and see it with who hated it. So it is what it is. It's all subjective, and just because I wasn't huge in it doesn't mean you won't be. Anyway, back to the podcast. It wants to be this crowd-pleasing summer blockbuster. That's what it wants to be. But in actuality, it looks like the crowd-pleasing summer blockbuster of this year is Barbie. And I don't think any film is going to take that over, at least for the rest of this summer, saying that there isn't longer this summer left. But you understand the point I'm making. This film wants to be this big crowd-pleaser and wants you to go there and go, wow, what a story. But that is how I felt about Le Mans 66, aka Ford v Ferrari, directed by James Mangold, and it came out in 2019 with Christian Bale and Matt Damon. That film is superb. And if you want to see a good film about racing and how difficult it is to be a race car driver, watch that film. I'm telling you, I've said this already in this podcast, I'm not into racing, I'm not into cars really whatsoever. Watch Le Mans 66, aka Ford v Ferrari. That was my favourite film of 2019. One of my favourite films of the past couple of years. So damn good. And that film was like 2 hours and a half. And it didn't feel it. This film is less, it's shorter than Ford v Ferrari, aka Le Mans 66. But it feels longer. It's not that good. But it's watchable. It's fine. It's okay. It's just generic, predictable, and it falls flat more than it triumphs. It falls flat more than it triumphs. So, in conclusion, if you're a fan of the Gran Turismo games, if you played them in the past, I would say watch this film. I just realised I've got 4 minutes left on the camera, so I'm going to really hurry up here. If you're a fan of the Gran Turismo games, I would say watch this movie, but I'm not, and maybe that's why I don't like it too much. But for me, as I mentioned, it's predictable, generic, and, I liked the last half an hour of the film, but by that point, it was too little too late. And so, as I have titled this podcast today, it is a mildly, Gran Turismo is a mildly entertaining extended advertisement for the Gran Turismo games. And that's pretty much how I feel about the film as a whole. And so, as already said, I'm going to say that Gran Turismo is a 6.3 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for the podcast today. Sorry if I had to rush this ending. I've just realised I don't have much time left on this camera before the sim runs out, from the sim card runs out. So, please let me know your thoughts on Gran Turismo. If you have seen it, in the comment section below, I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. Thank you as always for watching or listening, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.